We've got Mr. Colin Bex here, who has been speaking on the matter of regional parliaments, and more particularly a Wessex Parliament, a West of England or Wessex Parliament, since the 1970s. You don't look old enough.
Thank you.
So here we go, Colin. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, hello everybody. I'm going to have to go through this at a pace of knots.
You've got 10 minutes.
Yes, well, I'll need 15 or 20. Hello, I'm Colin Bex, joint founder of the Wessex Regionalists, the Party for Wessex. I'm second most long-standing, active serving member since 1974, when I accepted an invitation to join the Wessex movement by its founder, Alexander Thynne, then Viscount Weymouth of Longleat, now Lord Bath. Since then, I've stood for Wessex in 8 general elections in different constituencies across the region, including on the last 2 occasions against David Cameron in Witney, when in 2015, having distributed some 50,000 leaflets, some are available here, with just 110 votes, I won middle ground, standing in the centre of 11 candidates lined up on the platform. And had there not been a constitutional aberration in the party at the time, my valid candidacy would have enabled me to stand against Theresa May and, in the process, against most of what she represents, but to date conspicuously has failed to deliver, in betrayal of her fine-sounding but vacuous undertakings uttered from the steps of Downing Street the morning after her coronation. In the few minutes available to me, it's impossible to raise more than a few thoughts from the mountain of material necessary to do justice to any of the matters I raised. So first, suffice it to note that Malmesbury grew from later expansion of the site of a wealthy Saxon abbey founded in the first millennial mid-7th century, it is believed, by an Irish monk or hermit named Maelduib. Reputedly, Malmesbury is England's oldest borough, as in the late 800s, King Alfred the Great, 871 to 899, granted it a charter, shortly after which he and other kings of the remaining regions of the Heptarchy, Northumbria, East Anglia, Mercia and Wessex, accepted the leadership of Athelstan, thus creating suzerainty of the first English kingdom, whose origins in turn may be traced to the middle of the 6th century, when the Saxons finally wrested control of Wessex from the Britons. With that in mind, and in accord with all good West Saxon citizens, I would add my own welcome to all present, and to thank Guy and his team, and indeed to hail them for choosing such salutary surroundings in historic Wessex for the setting to inspire some constructive visions for Britain post-Brexit. So what are the aims and objectives of the Wessex Regionalists, the Party for Wessex? And how do they differ from those of other parties? What may they represent the best ideas on offer? Why may they represent the best ideas on offer for this historic conference? And why may they constitute a rockbed as foundation for the crucial changes long overdue and now so urgently needed if ever our species is to learn how to live, let alone deserve to live on this planet, other than on pain of the damage being done to it and themselves? In a nutshell, under the rubric Wessex Awake, our key challenges at present remain to attract a membership and support of a critical mass of intelligent citizens from across Wessex, sufficient to be able to achieve summary inauguration of a parliament or assembly for an autonomous Wessex region, self-sufficient and secure for every child, woman and man to be able to live out their lives for their natural duration in a manner and style which ensures they may experience what could and should be wonder and joy available to all, who recognise and respect scientific imperatives upon which all life exists and depends for its continued existence, if it is to have a chance to survive within the mystery and power of our expanding universe as it continues to unfold towards the oblivion from which it's believed it emerged. To that end, a principal duty of a Wessex Assembly will be to work sufficiently closely with the parish and county councils of the 8 shires, that is Gloucestershire, Oxfordshire, Berkshire, Wiltshire, Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, Dorsetshire, Devonshire and Somersetshire, in its mandatory capacity, that is the Assembly, as the principal source of subsidiarity to ensure adequate provision for the needs and requirements of all parishioners of each county, at their behest rather than at present continually being subjected to criminal depredations and deprivations visited upon them by a tiny minority of certifiable psychopaths, both uniting and competing with each other as puppets of the dark hand behind American Israel seeking full spectrum world dominance by 2020 in a race with nature and its own cyclic propensity for destroying the biosphere upon which they and everyone else depends. This idea is fundamentally different from that of any other party of which I'm aware, including, of course, the Scots and Welsh assemblies and those envisioned by Mebby and Kernow for Cornwall, and the acting Witan of Mercia, both of which also I am a long-standing member. In that our model, rather than retaining power of suzerainty over Britain, top-down, vested in any single person on whose head the crown may be fitted, over citizens of English vassal regions, or in this case vassal regions, and whose unwritten job description in exchange for continued holding of the giant portfolio of property and land in its possession is to sign all the papers presented it by the Privy Council, both for legal and illegal purposes, and completely regardless of the wishes or demands of any majority of British citizens, including everyone in this room. All of us who are regarded and treated as subjects of the monarch rather than as citizens of our regions, with democratic independent rights and freedoms sufficient to protect us under common law as derived, modified and augmented, for example, from Alfred's Dombock, which in turn recognises its origins in those issued by King Ina of Wessex, 688-726, and to kings from other regions at various times. Asked to the insidious effect of monarchical decree, top-down diktat from central government at Westminster, coupled with that of the civil service and the local authorities, who themselves are being shortchanged by the Treasury, whilst having more duties imposed on them, are taxation disproportionate to ability to pay, the ever-increasing demands of council tax, increasing business, residential rents and service charges, disproportionate corporate water rates, electricity and gas charges, public and private transport costs, ever-rising food costs, not to mention income tax, zero-hour contracts, inadequate housing allowance, and black holes for pensions, and exorbitant charges for debt repayment for those otherwise increasingly being prevented from being able to make ends meet and being wrongfully imprisoned in a black hole of inescapable debt. Further, anyone who's in any doubt about the palpable and increasing seriousness of the effects of the current breakdown of political, legal, moral, health and social stability locally, nationally and internationally, as a direct consequence of decades of failure by this current fundamentally flawed, irredeemably corrupt, unsustainable and undemocratic establishment system, is either capitalising from it, blind, or are keeping their heads in the sand and relying on the hope it will all blow over rather than blow up sooner than may be sufficiently comfortable. That is why, from my 43 years to date and continuing spent fighting in the avant-garde of those championing bottom-up, majority proportionally representative Wessex, Mercian and Cornish regionalism, and by implication for all the regions of England and Europe, if ever there's to be a chance of building a truly united Britain and Europe in place of the fictional charade those titles clearly misrepresent. United Kingdom, United Europe? Nonsense. We're divided kingdoms. We always have been, we always will be, unless we change this system. And the way it has to be done is from the bottom to the top, not from the top to the bottom. It will never happen if it stays that way. So we have an increasingly conspicuously divided, flagrantly inadequate infrastructure. It continues to inform me that neither reform of the decades-old system and people responsible nor their policies are an option. It must be dismantled sufficiently and be completely restructured in order to become unrecognisable if it is to be fit to provide for Britain's need post-Brexit, and instead must entail root and branch restructuring of all the core establishment structures, namely government from top-down diktat to bottom-up proportionally representative democracy. Political, from 3 London party controls by Westminster to local control instructing multi-party Rainbow Alliance regional assemblies. Legal, from an overfunded cash for justice commercial bonanza for the legal establishment to a multi-regional public law service available to defend the rights of all who most need it, for example at times of unwarranted austerity. Finance, from a game of numbers of virtual money used as a weapon of power for the benefit of unsustainable schemes of bonus for failure and good luck by people whom John Maynard Keynes is quoted, with a shudder one hands over to the men in white suits. Nearly there.
Good.
Press, this is another thing, the press. Peddlers of politically incorrect, manipulated news and fictions to accurate reports of what really is happening rather than fake news with photoshopped imagery such as in the Skripal fantasy, which of course is a Wessex matter. This is a complete sham being invented by the government. Anyone can see if a guy had... If any of us had been subjected to this particular viral infection, we'd be dead. The other point was religion. I mean, this is another very important thing for me. From undercover sexual perversion and other to honesty and integrity, that religion is a cultural celebration of historical events involving real people, some of whom, as may others in secular life, had experienced psychological manifestations, leading them to believe visions as fact, rather than the illusions they were. Right, well, that's pretty much it, so I better stop. I did have one. I'm allowed very quickly to say I'm inviting everyone, that is with Guy's approval, to sign the Malmesbury Declaration of the 9th of June 2018, which is, we, the undersigned, hereby demand that the British government initiates proportional democratic representation for the whole of England.
Thank you.
Come and sign.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.